So, one of the things I think that's important, just to kind of understand around Microsoft and kind of their mentality and where they're headed, okay, is security. And I don't think I can have this conversation about Surface without really taking the time to explain security, how it integrates into the Surface product line, what are some of the different ways that Microsoft is not only protecting my organization, my business, my files, my data, my information, um, but how are we doing that in conjunction with the devices that we're using every single day? Now, why is this important? Okay, I always like to set the stage because I think it's important just to, get everybody, on the same level or platform, I guess you could say. And I think number one, you've probably heard this a million times. I've said it a million times myself personally, and I don't mean to just continue the conversation, but business is different now. I was reading some articles while I was in Texas over break talking about how, some people think, you know, some businesses are just going to be virtual forever going forward. Now, does that mean everybody is going to? No, absolutely not. And that doesn't also mean that people aren't going to be going back into the office either. But my whole point that I'm trying to make here is that I think, where we currently stand today is an outlook on business and the way that we accomplish our tasks and our goals that incorporates a lot of different ways to potentially do this work, right? We might be working at home, we might be working at the office, we might be working on the go, if we're going ahead and actually traveling to go do some work as well. So, there's a lot of different pieces here that really come into play in terms of how we're actually doing the work. I mean, one of the things that is important here as well is, are we using certain devices appropriately, right? Am I using this Surface device as my primary device for work, or do I have another laptop, another phone, something else that I'm using to actually do my work as well? So again, the whole thing that I'm trying to get to here, and the reason I'm mentioning all this, is that we need to be very proactive as to how we're using these devices. And I think one of the most important reasons behind that is this concept of zero trust. Has anybody ever heard of the zero trust model? I'd love to get some feedback. Has anybody ever heard of this concept? If you have, maybe you could just give me an emoji here in the chat window. Betty says no. If you have, maybe, raise your hand or maybe give me an applause or something just to let me know you do. Betty says no. How about anybody else? Let's see if I go to the chat window. Okay. Carla's typing. She says no. Okay. All right. So let me just go ahead and explain this thing. Okay. I'm going to take 5 minutes just to kind of talk to this. Now, the zero trust model inside of Microsoft is really just an overarching mentality more than anything. That's really how I describe it, where, we're focused on minimizing risk as much as possible. Okay. And the reason that you would want to go ahead and minimize risk, right, is we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're doing things that are bringing more potential harm to the business that are unnecessary. Right. So when we're talking about the zero trust model, you'll get this line that, people typically talk about, and that's trust no one, verify everything. Okay. We're assuming as an organization inside of our security program that every request for access to information, for, access to a certain level of maybe sensitive information or data, these are all potential risk points. Okay. Now, the reason that's important and the reason you want to think through that is, what am I doing today as an organization in terms of the policies that I've set up, in terms of the different steps that I've taken for my security program that may or may not align with some of those topics, right? So for example, when we're thinking about devices, are we monitoring our devices? Are we managing access to these devices? Do we have specific rules in place potentially for maybe some of the different ways that people access this information? When it comes to applications, which we'll talk about a little bit later on here today, how are we reducing shadow IT? How are we managing the ability that the people inside of our organization have to use and to leverage some of these tools for their day-to-day work? When we're talking about our networks, right? How are we segmenting our networks appropriately? How are we building in barriers to some of this data, depending on levels of access and depending on the need for access inside of the organization? And then finally, something that you could pretty much have an entire organization or entire event around is, data management, data loss prevention. How are we encrypting? How are we classifying? How are we managing access to a lot of the different information that we have inside of our business, right? This is what we talk about when we're talking about the zero trust model. What are the different steps that we're taking, and how do those steps align with the concept of security, right? Because security is not something that that takes one step and you're totally clear with it, right? It's something that it's a step-by-step cumulative process that takes time and it takes effort to really figure out how you can put yourself in the best position to succeed. And so I'm hoping to, throughout this session, just kind of give you some different examples of how Surface devices interact with some of your security capabilities inside of Microsoft 365. And then once we get all of that, go through all of that, we can then get into some of these different products in this Surface line. So first thing I have to talk about, okay, and I know we're here around security, Microsoft 365, and so this has to be a topic of conversation, because when we're thinking about the capabilities of our devices, and we think about the ability for us to manage access to these devices, we can't have a conversation without talking first about how we're actively accessing that data. Okay, when we're thinking about security in the cloud, right? When we're thinking about managing some of these different capabilities, first thing we need to think about, okay, and this is, again, there's different layers to this, but I think this has to be first step, okay? If we don't have this in place, specifically identity and access management, we're not going to be able to control what information is accessible by what users. We're not going to be able to manage what information these users are individually getting access to on a regular basis, and we're not going to be able to manage data loss prevention in that way. And so, as we've turned to this cloud-based environment, so many of our organizations are focused on that. We need to have a very robust way to manage identities. And so in the context of Surface, the first thing that I can think about is going to be Windows Hello. Okay, has anybody ever heard of Windows Hello? Michael mentioned it just for a brief second there, but I'm wondering, does anybody, when I say the words Windows Hello, does that ring a bell for anybody? Anybody ever heard of that term? Anybody currently using that today? Feel free in the chat window, give me a thumbs up, tell me no, tell me yes. I'd love to see how comfortable we are on this specific topic. Pretty simple, easy place to start. Betty says no. Has anybody heard about it? Ruben says yes, okay. Carla says yes. Ruben or Carla, are you guys currently using this today? I'd love to maybe get some feedback there. Is this something that you guys have already installed for all of your users inside of your business? Ruben says no. Larry says no, not in the domain environment. Okay, got it. So I think it's important to walk through this. So let me go ahead. I just got a visual here for you, and I can go ahead and just 1 second. I'll share my screen here. Again, pretty simple stuff. I'm not going to go too complex, but I did just want to show you here. Okay, oops, I showed the wrong screen. So Windows Hello is going to be primarily around managing access to these specific devices. Okay, now we're talking, today about Surface devices, and so in the context of these Surface devices, the first thing we need to think about is, okay, The risk of downloading and saving and managing data on a corporate device is that the information lives on that device, right? And so if that device is lost, if it's stolen, if somebody gets access to it, either by accident or on purpose, if it's malicious, right? Well, now we've got a completely different situation that we need to worry about, right? And so one of the, I guess you could say, movements inside of Surface and inside of security from Microsoft is this concept of going passwordless. And we'll talk a little bit about a different example for that a little bit later on. But in the context of a passwordless environment, right, we want to start moving away from having to remember all these different passwords that are really just a pain, right? We got passwords all over the place, right? For different applications, different services. People don't want to remember them. People don't want to write them down. People forget them. It's a total hassle. It's a headache, right? And so this is one of the first things that I really like about Surface is I'm building security into the fabric that is the device. Because what you'll see here, to kind of give you a visual, is if you open up your laptop, and this goes for any individual who would open up your laptop, you're going to see either, in Michael's case, the fingerprint, or you're going to have a facial recognition software built into the fabric of the device. Now, what's really cool about this is that the key, right, that actually allows you into the device, that information is actually stored on the device level, right? This is not something that's going to be cloud-based, meaning this is not something that you could necessarily get from their Microsoft 365 subscription. And then now you have access to every single corporate device on the network, right? It's on the device level. And what you'll notice here is it's looking for biometric authentication, right? What can I look at from a physical perspective of the individual that can guarantee without a shadow of a doubt that this is the person that should be accessing this information, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit later on here when I get into multi-factor authentication here in just a second, because that's absolutely something else you should be looking at as well. But the point I'm trying to get to here is we're bringing in secondary forms of authentication. Instead of having a password here, right, I'll have a PIN for backup in case I need it. But the primary way that I'm going to be accessing this device is through some type of biometric authentication. In this case, we've got facial recognition. And what you'll notice is that when you go ahead and you actually sign in, you see the eye in the bubble looking for the individual. As soon as it recognizes, okay, this is the user that is looking to access this information, it goes ahead and you now have this concept or this ideal of single sign-on, right? This is one of the most important things that I think people don't really think about as much, right? When I log in, I now have access either online or if I've downloaded applications down to the actual computer to all of the different services inside of Microsoft 365 that allow me to do my job. Right? One of the other things when we're talking about minimizing the needs for passwords constantly all the time is how are we balancing this security that we're enabling with the productivity that I want to happen inside of the workplace, right? I don't want to have to sign in 20 times in order to get things done, because what's going to happen is people are just going to get upset. They're going to think it's pointless. And that's when you start getting, issues internally with making it a little too locked down, making it too hard to function. And we don't want to be in a position where that's the case, right? We want to make it easy for people to do their work so that people buy in. At the end user perspective, it's still easy for them to do their job. And from the perspective of IT, I have granular controls that I can put in place. Now, again, this is the first step, I think, when it comes to security on the device level. But it's not necessarily everything, right? It's the first thing I want to show. But before I keep moving on, does this make sense to everybody? Again, just kind of want to open up here. Windows Hello, I think it's very important. I think it's awesome. This is something that you could integrate with your devices that are Windows enabled, right? Especially these Surface devices. Really easy. Go to your Intune, you figure it out. Makes a lot of sense, right? We can walk you through that, set a time with Michael, and kind of figure out how that might look for you as well. Now, I can't talk about security, especially through the lens of Microsoft and through the lens of Surface, without talking about multi-factor authentication. Okay, and the reason for that is multi-factor authentication, number one, is really the bedrock for identity and access management. And especially, you know, we're talking about zero trust, we're talking about this new model of doing work. You need to have this in place. And so I always tell people, because I talk about MFA all the time, because it's, in my opinion, it's probably one of the most important things that you could do today. If you take anything from the session today, it's that if you don't have multi-factor authentication enabled, put that on your list of items to do this week, this month, as soon as possible. Because this is really going to build in the fabric of security that you need to make sure your devices are protected and your data is protected. Is there anybody here who maybe is concerned about MFA? You haven't done it yet. You're kind of confused as to why it's important. Or maybe you already have it enabled and it's something that you think is awesome. I'd love to field any questions there. If there's maybe concerns or there's maybe some thoughts there. I see Carla's typing, so I'll give her a second here. But if anybody, feel free to come off mute as well. If you've got any questions, I'd love to address them. So Carla, I'll just give you a second here. Okay, maybe not. Okay, so when we're thinking about MFA, it's kind of similar to Windows Hello in the sense that we're getting something beyond a password. Okay, there's a variety of different ways to do this. Okay, I'm going to walk you through one of the ways that I think is most effective for businesses, and that's through what's called the Microsoft Authenticator app. And I'll show you that here in just a second. Now, when we're talking about multi-factor authentication, it's in the name, right? We're taking multiple pieces of authentication in order to authorize access to certain, could be files, could be, accounts, could be information for these different users, right? But how does this actually look like in action? Okay, so let me go ahead and show you this. So I'm going to share my screen here. And hopefully this kind of paints the picture as to why I think this is so critical, okay? So we're going to do this demo a little bit later on. I'm very excited about this, but let me just kind of show you something here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up an incognito window. Now, the reason for that is I'm already signed into my Office account here, and so I don't want to be automatically signed in. Again, single sign-on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to office.com, and I'm going to go ahead and sign in. Okay. Now, we're talking about the context of passwords and how those can be problematic, right? Now, here's where it comes into play, okay? If I only had a password that was protecting my account, this is all that I would need, okay? So if somebody leaves a password on a sticky note, right? If somebody shares it with somebody because they need to do something on their behalf, and now all of a sudden they've got their credentials. If somebody gets phished, I mean, that's one of the, still to this day, one of the leading potential ways of security breaches in the market. This is not going to be sufficient, right? Because once my credentials are compromised, then there's nothing else really that's protecting me when it comes to security. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here, and then I'm going to share my actual phone screen because what I want you to be able to notice here is exactly how this all comes into play, right? Because typically when we're talking about MFA, we've got a few different options. First option is going to be a text message, right? Next option is going to be a phone call, and that's not to say that that's not helpful. I absolutely think it is helpful. However, my personal opinion, I like the Authenticator app. And the reason for that is we're bringing in biometric forms of authentication, similar to what you saw inside of Windows Hello. So let me go ahead and share my phone screen so you kind of understand what I mean here. So when I go ahead and share my screen, okay, I'm going to start the broadcast. It'll start here in just a second. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm then going to go ahead and sign in. Okay, so that when I go ahead and I actually sign in, you should hopefully be able to see. And let me know, are you guys able to see my phone screen? Do you guys see this? Give me a thumbs up if you do. No, Ruben says no. Okay. How about now? There we go. Okay.
There you go.
Got it. So what you'll see here is once I go ahead and I sign in, what's happening? Okay. Well, it's letting me know here that I need to approve this sign-in. So I'm going to click on Approve the Authenticator. Okay. When I get here, I then have to deny or approve manually. So then I'm going to first approve this. But then, and very critically, I then have the actual biometric authentication. Okay. And so what you saw there is there was a couple layers. Okay. Number one, I get a notification every single time somebody signs on to my account. Okay, so hopefully you're doing that every time from your Surface device, right? But maybe it's a completely different device now that's signing in with those credentials. Maybe it's you signing in from a different location, and that's triggering some type of concern for Microsoft in terms of security. However you're doing it, right? In this case, it was just a private browser. The point is, every single time that happens, I get a notification. And so I'm going to be able to manually see every time somebody's trying to sign into my account. And then on top of that, not only do I control, okay, do I approve, do I deny? I then have to do a secondary form of authentication in the form of facial recognition. Could be a fingerprint. But the point is, I'm doing something that verifies I am who I say I am. Because now what you'll notice is not only do I need to have my credentials, I then need to have my phone that's involved here with the Authenticator app. And then on top of that, I need my face or I need my fingerprint. So, we're building in layers of security that are ultimately going to provide the barrier against those potential threats that are trying to access our information. And so that's why I always take the time to explain multi-factor authentication. I'll tell you, most of the time I'll do these sessions, it's about 50-50 split. It's gotten better over time. More and more people have started enabling this, but there's still plenty of organizations out there that unfortunately may not really fully understand the value. And so that's what I'm hoping to showcase here today as to, especially when we're thinking about Surface devices and we're thinking about storing information and all that critical data. How are we protecting identities to access that? Michael, do you want to jump in here for just a sec?
So all Surface devices come with either a fingerprint reader in the case of what I showed you, or facial recognition, which I use. I also am broadcasting from a Logitech camera that's out there. It's a higher end Logitech camera. And when that's plugged into any of my devices, it uses facial recognition. And then two more quick things. We have clients rolling out these keys called YubiKeys that go out there. And it's kind of have something, know something, because sometimes people didn't want to have, some of our clients didn't want to have their employees utilize their personal cell phones for two-factor authentication. So we have a few clients that issue these keys to go out there. They have to be inside the laptop to boot up. They are touch, they're NFC, and they actually come in different flavors. Like this is one of the devices that'll go inside a Samsung phone, USB-C. So replacing that, and in some of the newer versions of, depending on your Office 365, we have clients that are going 100% passwordless. So a new employee comes in, they're issued a device, they either put their key in or a temporary password that's texted to them, and then the only way that they can get in is to utilize this device. So there's no passwords. We don't care what they are. And in a few financial institutions that we're working with, when they pull this key out, because usually the keys are hit, the key is tied to a keychain, and they might have another card to go out in and out of the office. When you pull this out of the workstation, the screen locks. So you put the key back in, the screen unlocks. So I just bring this up only because that you don't have to have a high security firm, but you could just have a company that has a bunch of turnover. And in reality, all of this is integrated. But the Surface devices natively have this, and we are adding this to one client that actually has Surface devices because they didn't want to deal with that. And in the healthcare field, sometimes they don't want to use fingerprint because recently my mother-in-law is still in the hospital. But I've been in 4 different hospitals in the past 4 weeks. When you take the glove off, none of the hospitals have fingerprints just because the little powder that's left on makes it a little difficult. So there's a lot of cool ways to get there, and we are getting to a passwordless world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to touch on that, Michael, because that was a topic that I was thinking about bringing up as well. Those keys are super awesome, right? I mean, it's not even just the concept of passwordless, it's the flexibility I think that it brings you for signing in and needing that secondary form of authentication, right? In this case, we're not talking about biometrics, but we're talking about having access to the key, right? I've seen some of the keys work where they have a fingerprint enabled on the key as well, right?
This thing does, and this
This
is as low as, again, UB sells to the government. So you're a small client if you're buying 500 keys. So on Amazon, $55 a key. That the easiest place to get these devices that are out there. And yes, it's $55, but in reality, what does one breach cost?
Exactly. And we're talking about Surface, right? We're talking about devices. We're talking about upgrading, hopefully, and kind of thinking about what we're thinking through. I know a lot of organizations I've spoken to, they're very concerned about security. And they're thinking about adding some devices, but maybe not for every single worker, right? Maybe more for C-level and maybe director level. But for everybody else, they're okay with what they currently have. And so they're still thinking about, okay, what are some of the other ways I can increase security? Well, the key, it's a much cheaper alternative, right? And that brings several pieces to it. The other thing to think about is, are you guys currently sharing any devices? One of the ways that Windows Hello doesn't work is if you've got a device that's being used by multiple parties, right? Because Windows Hello is tied to one identity. It's not tied to multiple identities. And so when you're signing in, you're not going to want to deactivate and activate Windows Hello every single time, especially if it's used by 10 people, let's say, right? And so what you could do instead is give everybody one of those keys that you see there that Michael has, so that you're only going to be able to sign into that device if you own one of those, right? And you have that readily available. And so now you're bringing in that biometric authentication, which you can with the fingerprint if you wanted to, or you could just make it so that you need the key in order to be able to access the device. We're still building in security. We're still building in second forms of authentication, and that's at the device and the identity level. Very, very critical just to kind of understand. Is there any questions on that? I know I was a little confused first time I heard it, so I wouldn't be surprised if, maybe there's some questions on maybe how it works, how it maybe differentiates with, some of these other tools. Any thoughts?
Hey, Tamika, how you doing? Long time.
Yes, I was like, oh my goodness, I missed the training. Hi.
Nah, you're in. So we're talking about two factors. So guys, I will say that you've heard me preach cybersecurity all the time. So what our clients have started to do is, for a lot of people, we're rolling out password managers. So as an example, I use LastPass and we sell LastPass, and everyone usually says, well, that's that single point of failure because now I have to have a password to get in. So in that case, I've tied to fingerprint, on my Surface Go, and now my LastPass is tied to, this or an authenticator to get in. So, everyone's starting to think about security, and just remember that some of you might say, oh, what does the world want with my passwords? Every one of us is for sale on the dark web.
100%.
It's a start to tell you where your people are, and we are going through all these email storms. For those of you that are our clients, this morning I must have got 200 emails from Mimecast that came back to tell me that, hey, every permutation of M Goldstein was blocked by Mimecast. So there was M1X Goldstein, M2Xs, so MXX Goldstein, M. Goldstein, and all of our employees. So all of us are targets of not only, crime coming in, spam coming in, and they're gathering that because they found that M. Goldstein is on the dark web. And any of us in Fort Lauderdale that use the Park Mobile app, on all the parking meters, they had a breach a couple months ago. So Park Mobile, we all use that. T-Mobile just put it in a breach that was out.
I saw that.
Marriott, so your data is for sale on the dark web. So all we're stressing, and the reason why we bring this up, is your key, your golden key to your digital life is your password. And if you are just using one permutation of the password, like you throw an exclamation point at the end of it or whatever, the bad guys are out there. And I can send any of you the list of all the blocked emails that I got personally this morning. And yes, we have a great tool that blocks it, but it was interesting to see the permutations of just trying to throw different devices. Now, yes, is it to cause havoc? And sometimes these email storms are to hide that the bad guys might have changed one of your passwords. So again, it's really important that we take this seriously going back down. And lastly, I'll stop with my preaching on this, is that we all know that a majority of employees use the same password for their Gmail account that they use for their corporate account.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't have to blink, you don't have to wink. We all know that a majority of people use that same permutation. So personally, when you get hacked, for those of us that are owning a business or part of a high level business, that leaves the business exposed. So that's why it's very important that, you know, at the business level, we start using this form of two-factor authentication. And that's why the Surface devices are so cool, because it comes with it built in. So that was my ranting on this stuff, because it just happened to me this morning.
Yeah, no, and I think that's super, super critical to talk to. And I'll add on to that and say that you're only as great as your weakest link. I remember when I was playing sports, that was always my my coach's favorite thing to say, right? And I think it's the same thing when it comes to security. One person gets phished, one person, you know, loses their credentials. All of a sudden, the whole business is at stake, right? It's that simple. That's as scary as it is. It's that simple. And so if we're not taking steps to hopefully protect ourselves there inside of this concept of zero trust, we're adding additional risk that we simply do not need, right? That's why identity management is so critical. Very important.
Identity management.
Identity and access management, yes.
That's the technical term of be careful with that password.
That's right. Okay, so
now I had mentioned earlier that I had a travel fiasco 2 weeks ago in DFW airport. I spent 14 hours and eventually had a sleepover. So I will tell you that I spent 10 of those hours in the American Express Centurion Lounge. You know, free food, free booze. Well, the part of that is that I was people watching most of the day with my N95 and my hoodie on because I didn't want to touch anything. But you see people leaving their laptops open. The person across from me that was kind of sharing a cubicle walked away multiple times. You know, I was just wandering around this lounge all day thinking, wow, I wish I was a bad guy, because I would have had, you know, people left stuff logged in. So think about that. Those are the people that work for you. Laptops left on. People went and wandered around place. You know, the person across from me, I think the longest that she left, and she actually left her pocketbook on the couch next to me, her laptop, and then she waited 32 minutes because I timed it. This was her second time to go get food and a drink, and that laptop was out there. Everything, you know, we just think about these things. So people watching is what I end up doing, and you can see this, and it happens everywhere. So
that's actually a great transition, Michael. I appreciate that, because that actually works very well with the next thing I was going to talk about, and that has to do with application management and device management. Okay, inside of Microsoft 365 and inside of how you would be managing your company devices like your Surface line, you're typically going to be using what's called the Microsoft Endpoint Manager, or Microsoft Intune as it was previously called, to manage those devices, to manage those applications. Okay, now it's not a simple process, okay? I'm going to make this as simple as possible to understand, but, on the back end, you got to walk through a lot of different steps, and you really need to evaluate, based on my business and the ways that I get work done and the different ways that I maybe leverage some of these tools. How can I do this in a way that's going to be effective? Because, it's going to be a work in progress process. It's going to be something that you just need to continually try and educate yourself on. Now, reason I'm bringing this up and I'm saying it was a good transition is because devices are not specifically only your Surface line that you're going to be using for work. Okay, I talked a lot at the very beginning about how we're working in a completely different way, right? Different locations, different devices, different networks. And so I'm gonna focus in on devices here, because the problem is we not only need to protect our Surface device, we also need to protect every other device that's accessing critical business information. And we need to be able to differentiate between different use cases for the business, right? I'll give you a very simple example, and then I'll show you just kind of a visual here for something that correlates to what Michael was referencing. And that is the idea of how we're managing access to company data from personal devices, okay? This is where governance comes into play, right? The rules, the policies that we're enabling and how we're managing to that as an organization. The first thing I think you should be thinking through and kind of, discussing and evaluating as a business is how much flexibility do we want to allow, right? I think that's the first thing you need to ask yourself. Do I even want people to be able to access this information from their phones, right? I know it's super useful, right? If I gotta go take a flight, or I'm driving somewhere and I want to just quickly check on something, that's awesome. But do I want that potential threat, coming into the business? Because again, we're now opening the door just a little bit, right? Because we don't have control over that device, right? If we're talking about a phone, for example, the business does not control this device, okay? The business can, though, however, control the underlying applications, okay? So this is the first thing I'll talk about. When we're talking about mobile application management, how are we putting rules in place for this data and how it's accessed from different devices ultimately, right? So let me go ahead and just quickly, I can show you just a really simple visual here that I think kind of captures what I'm trying to say. So if I just share my screen real quick. The example here, the idea is we have a user who maybe they just rolled out of bed, okay? I'm sure all of us have done this before. I know I've definitely done it before. 5 a.m., you're looking at your phone, you're tired, but you got some important presentation to do, so you want to just check your emails, make sure you clear that out before you get to the office, okay? I think we've all been in that situation. Now, the problem is, again, this is not a business approved device. The business does not control this, right? This is my personal device. I can decide how I want to use this. But I'm now accessing critical company data, whether it be on Teams, whether it be on Outlook, whatever application we're thinking about leveraging. And so as a business, you need to be thinking, okay, how can I put steps in place to protect the data at the application layer? I don't have management of the device that I can do, but I can have management of that individual application. And so in the context of what Michael was talking about, people leaving their devices open, this is where it comes into play. Because what I'm going to do as an organization is I'm going to allow this, but I'm going to allow it with certain caveats, okay? Just to kind of show you here. So the idea, again, I've got a phone here, and I want to go ahead and access, let's say, Outlook on my phone. So what I do is I go ahead and I open this up. And you notice I've already done whatever authentication I need to get into the actual phone. And typically, I would then just be able to go ahead and select whatever application I want to go ahead and use. Now, if we're thinking about protecting these applications, though, why not have a conditional access policy in place that essentially states I'm only going to allow access to this data under certain conditions, right? This is the idea of conditional access if you've never heard about it before. And specifically in this example, what we're doing is we're having the user re-authenticate themselves every time they access this information from a personal device. Okay, so what you'll see here is even though I'm already in to this device, I go ahead and I open it up. I try and get access to Outlook, but in order for me to then access Outlook, every single time I do that, I need to do some type of biometric authentication, whether it's Face ID, whether it's Touch ID in this example, and then I'm actually allowed access to this data, right? Because when we're thinking about all the sensitive information that we're hosting on our emails, I mean, that's something that I don't think we really talk about enough as just an industry. How are we taking steps to protect that? And beyond just protecting access to this information by doing something like that conditional access policy, how are we then going beyond that and putting things in place so that if the device is lost, if it's stolen, I'm going to be able to remotely wipe all that data from the cloud, right? So all of the information that's hosted in that application on my phone in Outlook, I'm going to be able to go ahead and just do a device wipe right from my Microsoft 365 Admin Center so that I can guarantee if that phone is lost, there's not going to be any potential risk to my business, right? So again, we're talking about device management. What conditional access policies do I want to put in place? How am I managing access to this in a way that's going to be impactful for my organization so that I'm protecting that very, very sensitive data? Critical question you need to ask yourself, right? Because if we can't control that access, if we can't control the way that people are doing this, then we are opening the door. Again, we're not using this concept of zero trust because we're opening up the door, whether or not we're doing it, extremely, at an extremely granular level, or we're just doing simple steps. I think it's important just to do as much as you can. And I think that goes into what Tamika's saying here. She says, for small business owners, biometrics can be daunting when it comes to device management. I totally understand it, right? Especially if it's something that, maybe might be new, something that is not a practice that you've done regularly. For me, Tamika, I would say to, challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to see if it's something that we can do. Now, I know there's a learning curve, especially for, people who, again, this is brand new to. But for me, it's just so important that it's something that I think you should just try. I understand it's daunting and I get it. I've had that conversation with a lot of different businesses. But for me, it just brings so much more security to play that I think it's worth it if you can just figure out how to do it. So I'd love to get your thoughts, though. I'd love to get your thoughts. Kind of see what you think.
Well, I only my only thought process is that I think when it comes to this, we actually need to sit down as people, but also as small business owners, and come up with a plan. Because Michael then will tell you, for the first time ever in December, I got hacked royally, and I managed clients' accounts. Like, I actually managed their money. And so my hack was they moved money from a client's account into my account. And I was sleeping. Like, this was happening while I was sleeping, but it just so happened that the client, they were up and they were texting me frantically, like, why are you moving so much money from our account to yours? It was crazy. And so I think in order for what you're talking about, it is daunting. We have all these passwords. Michael and Glenn have been trying to talk to me about this LastPass and like getting on a centralized situation. But I think too, we need to create or learn or figure out how to create these policies for ourselves so that we know what to do. Because if I lose this cell phone, okay, as I learned during the hack, my other phone had all of my, what do you call it? The authenticators on it. Yeah. But when we switched the phone, I couldn't get into the other phone.
Nightmare. Yep.
I couldn't get into my authenticator because it was on the other phone that had been wiped. So yeah, I don't know if you guys are creating things like that for small business owners or whatever, but I definitely think what we're talking about here, small business owners and, just normal everyday people should be thinking about these things and having a process and policy and procedure in place should this happen.
So I will tell you, Tamika, that the Log Me In company that owns LastPass just made an announcement to go out there and say, hey, with every business license that you buy and you assign to a user, you get 5 family licenses, just to kind of show you the seriousness of them going out there and use the password, kind of manager setup. Secondly, with any authenticator, you got to make sure that there's a backup. And then lastly, I will tell you that I have a small business owner. 2 Fridays ago, her phone got cloned from AT&T to Verizon. So now her 2-factor authentication, the not-for-profit she works for, they tried to transfer $1 million out of the account. So God. In reality, we have to rethink what the security is. And I know in some businesses, forcing people to use a key means the world comes to an end. But in this case, this small not-for-profit. So not only did she have her personal life shaken up because somehow her phone got transferred from AT&T to Verizon without her knowledge or authorization. These guys got all of that information that was out there, and it's a small little 5-person not-for-profit. So in reality, we have to take some of these things seriously for the business and for the piece. And security isn't meant to be easy. But in today's day and age, the bad guys have the upper hand. I just saw it on the Today Show this morning. And I never like to quote public TV, but at 7:40 this morning, they talked about all of the public schools in the past 60 days that have had some type of ransomware, and the next biggest target in these next few months, being that, yes, we're in Florida, but in the Northeast, school hasn't started yet, are school-age children that are on the internet. So we got to do something.
Yeah. Great example there, Tamika. I appreciate you jumping in, because I think that really captures the reason this is so important, right? I mean, there's so many different ways that you get breached, and so taking as many steps as possible is important. I think, just to kind of answer your thoughts, just my final point there, it's baby steps, right? I mean, none of this that I'm talking about can be done overnight. Okay, this is a process. It's something that gets built into your security program that you need to be able to, have that plan of action that you were talking about to help you go from A to Z in terms of security, right? It's absolutely not something that you do overnight. And so I don't necessarily expect that, and I'm not trying to say that's what's necessary. However, speed is of the essence, especially if you don't have any of this in place. So pretty cool. So that was the concept of mobile device management, right? How are we managing access from these different devices, right? How am I using Intune and integrating that into my Surface capabilities in order to protect the data that I'm primarily potentially accessing through my Surface device, but then also maybe accessing from my phone or maybe from my tablet at home, right? Very, very important. On top of that, though, I also want to talk about the concept of mobile application management. Okay, I'm not sure if anybody has ever heard of this concept, right? Mobile application management. It's, again, something else inside of Microsoft Intune Microsoft Endpoint Manager that is very critical to protecting the information that is living inside of your business. But as opposed to talking about the device level, we're now talking about the application layer. Okay. When we're thinking about our business, again, this is something else where you need to evaluate and kind of think about what you're doing and how you accomplish things as a unit. What are the applications that I use every single day? I think that's what you need to ask yourself. Because if we're really kind of approaching this from this concept that we talked about, the zero trust model, we need to be thinking through, how we're going step by step and evaluating, these different applications that we want to allow inside of the business, right? So let me give you an example here of a scenario where this is important. And I guarantee you this is something that you guys have all experienced to some, level or degree. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here again one more time. And what we're talking about here is specifically how we're protecting access to different applications inside of the business. And this is not in the context of different devices. This is specifically in the context of maybe your new Surface device that you're rolling out for the business. Because what we're doing here is we're putting rules in place. We're putting policies in place. We're thinking about governance and how that integrates with the capabilities that I'm allowing on these different devices. Remember, these devices are vectors to information about your business, critical capabilities that you can do with your credentials, with your accounts. And so, we don't want to potentially compromise ourselves by just allowing everybody inside the organization to use them in whatever way they like. Okay, we need to have rules in place that can manage against some of these potential threats. In the context here, we're talking about blocking or not allowing access to certain applications. Okay, and again, we're doing this through Intune. We're doing this through the mobile endpoint manager, so that this is all cloud-based, right? We have an organization that has a cloud-based security system through Microsoft 365. And so we're enrolling all of these different devices into our Azure Active Directory security program. And so we can roll out these different rules to really the entire user base for the business, right? So you can kind of see this. And I can just kind of walk through this, right? The idea is we have an employee. okay? And the employee is on lunch, okay? So they're just taking a break, but they've got a vacation coming up, okay? And just like myself, this employee is looking for deals, okay? They want to save as much money as possible. And I totally respect that. And I think everybody, just go ahead, take a vacation, it helps. The point is, though, they're going here, they're going to the App Store, and what they want to look for is they've heard that they can use the Trivago app to go ahead and find some really good deals here for vacation. And so when they go here, they search it, they go ahead and try to download this. But what happens is when it actually starts downloading, it's supposedly getting installed. What you'll notice is that they get a notification. And this notification tells them that, hey, this app has been blocked by your system administrator. And the reason for that is we put specific rules in place for what applications we're allowing inside of the business. Maybe you have a list of 10 applications, Teams, Outlook, SharePoint, maybe some other third-party non-Microsoft services that you're using today that are important for getting your work done. What are we allowing? What are we not? Because, what's the problem here? What's the potential threat? Trivago may not be a malicious organization, but what happens exactly like Michael was talking about if they get breached, if they get hacked, and now all of a sudden they have access to information about your organization that they shouldn't have? Or maybe what happens if they are a malicious application, right? And now we've exposed our devices and our entire business as a result to these threats, right? We want to take as little risk as possible because the more risk that we take, the more opportunity that we open up for these bad actors. And so again, when we're talking about device management and we're talking about application management, you're typically going to be walking through the tool inside of Microsoft 365, which is Microsoft Intune. And that's going to integrate very, very well with Surface because Surface was built for Microsoft 365. I think that's probably one of the things that I'd say in terms of a selling point, right? If I was having a conversation with somebody in terms of why I love using Surface with my Microsoft 365 account, it's because it's built for Surface, right? All of the applications are automatically available on my device. I have this concept of hello, single sign-on. Every rule that I integrate for my organization is very easily integrated into my overall system because, again, these Surface devices are integrated specifically to be able to be leveraged with Microsoft 365. So really cool stuff there. Again, I just kind of want to walk you through that because it's not just identity management, it's also device management, it's application management. It's really holistically bringing together your security capabilities and enrolling that into the devices that you're using every day, which in this case is Surface. Michael, go ahead.
And I think we all forget that there's a Windows 10 store. Everyone's always worried about the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. So, there are applications that are on that store that I do see a lot of people load in there. We also can go out there and have Intune control the physical devices other than Surface devices. So in the case of that, I'll pick on Larry and his organization. We rolled out iPads for their organization, and we were able to lock down what was used in the Apple Store or what they can go out there and use. So again, it's thinking about what data that you don't want people to get at that point. And listen, Trivago might have been something. It was a good example. There's a lot of things that are on the store that they shouldn't have that go out there. So I think it's important to think about your whole overall strategy.
Yeah, and we're talking about overall strategy. I'm not sure if anybody's ever heard of autopilot. I'm just going to throw this out there because I think it's a cool topic, right? One of the biggest things that people worry about when they start enrolling new devices is from the beginning to the end of that device lifecycle, how are we getting the device prepped and how are we organizing the device so that as soon as it basically turns on and somebody signs into their account, they can have it ready-made with all of the policies, all the security, all the tools that you want to integrate as a business, right? And that's what autopilot, brings you to. I don't want to have necessarily a whole conversation on it, but I think that's one of the biggest selling points for Surface inside of M365, because I can very granularly decide, Michael, he's doing this X, Y, and Z for the business. I want him to have this level of access with these certain capabilities. And so I'm going to set his account up. I'm going to send him his Surface device that's brand new. As soon as he signs in with his Azure Active Directory credentials, the device is automatically pre-populated and ready to go with whatever configuration you're looking for. Really, really simplifies end-to-end that entire process. And so, when we're thinking about maybe investing in some of these new devices, I will tell you, by using something like Autopilot to set you up, it makes everything a lot easier. I'm not sure, Michael, if you have any other insights that you want to share on that.
Yeah, I'll say this, that when we talk about it, I just want to be clear that some of you that are clients on there have a different type of plan that's out there. So we have to make sure that these are the M plans. We have a client that last July, they're a Fort Lauderdale-based client. They started their property management company that took over 10 properties in the North and South Carolina area. We were able to drop ship equipment, right from the manufacturer. They logged in with the username and, of course, temporary password we gave them. And those machines were auto-configured with, for those of you that are clients, with Kaseya, with either WebRoot or SentinelOne, with Office. So we were able to plug that in. And then we have another success story of a small financial services company, under 50 users, but 20 of them are in the UK. They walked into the Microsoft store pre-pandemic in the UK. Same thing. Boom, plugged it in. We were able to change it all to, we knew that they were in the UK, so we were able to change the keyboard to a UK keyboard by default, all those kind of things that would make it cool. And that's where we're kind of go to touchless. And some apps can't be scripted, to be honest with you, but the basic stuff gives you a way of just taking something, especially if you're traveling or someone's, have that executive that's, in San Francisco, dropped their device, walked into a Best Buy and, bought a new Surface. How are we going to remotely configure it? So
I love it.
A lot of cool stuff.
A lot of really cool stuff. So we've been talking about security. We've been talking about Surface. Let's jump into it, okay? I told you we would do this towards the end here for maybe 20 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and send a link in the chat window. So you should see a link here populate inside of your chat window here for the Teams meeting. I want you to go ahead and select on that link. And I'll share my screen here as well, just so you can follow along with me in case you're having issues. And this is actually going to be a access to demos on all these different devices from the Surface product line, which is pretty awesome, right? This is something that's new. It's not readily available in terms of, it's really difficult to find unless, somebody like myself or anybody else who's doing one of these presentations can actually just send you a link to do this. So pretty cool stuff. And my whole point for doing this is I want you to be able to see, all these different devices and some of these different capabilities and how they're really engineered, to try and adapt to the different users that you might have inside of your business. So I'm going to give everybody just a moment. Again, click on that link, open it up in your browser, and you should hopefully be able to see this page where you can actually individually explore Surface for your business. Anybody having any problems getting to this page? Anybody need any help with that? Give me a thumbs up with the emoji or in the chat window like this. I'll show you if you're good to go. I just want to make sure everybody can get here first. And go ahead. Bonus points too. Is there a specific device that you guys want to walk through first? I see Larry's good. That's awesome. Is there a specific device maybe you were interested in kind of walking through that you want to talk about first? I want to just kind of explore all these different ones because I think it's pretty awesome. But I can go individually, or if anybody's got specific devices they want to look at, happy to have that, do it that way as well. Any thoughts there from the group? All right, not a problem. So let's just jump into one of these then. So first one I can take a look here is, let's just say this Surface Pro 7. So what you'll notice inside of this demo, okay, is you can actually select on them, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select on this Surface Pro 7 Plus here. And you're going to be able to actually see all the different pieces that make up this device. Now, in terms of who this was created for, one of the most well-known Surface devices. This is really, I think, kind of where they started in terms of popularity. The ability for you to have a tablet and a computer in one, right, was kind of the idea. Very light. So I'm seeing here 1.7 pounds incredible how light that is. But you can also have, all the different applications, right? Whether that's Outlook, Teams, or whatever other tools that you're using that are going to be able to be integrated into this. You got USB-C, USB-A ports that you can use, 15 hours of battery life, and quick charging as well, which is pretty awesome. Now, if you kind of jump into each of these, you'll notice you have different ways to actually view this, right? In this case, I've got laptop mode because I've got the actual device. I've got my cover, and so now I have my keyboard ready to go. But maybe I wanted studio mode because I wanted to maybe write on it. I wanted to, mark. I wanted to, see a different, way of doing this. Or maybe I just want to see this as a tablet, right? I just want to go ahead and actually have access to a tablet. So you notice you've got a lot of different variety of ways that you can use this device. I've got different colors here. You can customize this to see what it looks like, right? Change the colors here. I could change the pen, right? You can go individually and kind of explore some of these different things, right? So you see you've got 15 hours of battery life. You can see all the different buttons, right, that are involved here, what the camera capabilities look like, right? In this case, you'll notice we were talking about Windows Hello authentication. Well, that's obviously integrated here into our device, right? I've got things that you can look at my speakers. I can look at the pen and how that integrates together. I will say, if you're going to get the Surface Pro 7, highly recommend you get this cover, okay? I think this cover really brings it all to life because you're now going to have the ability to type. You're going to be able to have protection for that device. And I don't really think you get the full use of it without the cover. So that's just my only caveat here for this Pro 7. But overall, a lot of flexibility. This is something you can absolutely take on the go. It's got a lighter feel, more of a tablet device, and I think it's really cool. Feel free to explore this, okay, as much as you like. I'm just kind of talking through some of these different highlights that I think are important. Anybody have any questions on this device specifically? And Michael, of course, if you want to jump in at any point in time, just jump in by all means. But any questions from the group here? Does this make sense? Again, really cool portable device. That's how I see this being used.
And they're really great quality made devices. Just to show you, I got the laptop. The laptop device here is one of my devices. These are all my personal devices. I pay what you guys pay. Microsoft doesn't discount these things. And this thing has been with me 2 years, actually 3 years. So I'll say in its first year, it definitely had a ton of miles on it. And the thing works phenomenal that's out there. So I like the full keyboard type piece that's out there. I didn't like the portable type keyboard. Touch screen, built in, pretty amazing. And then, like I said, I showed you the Go. And if you guys are looking for accessories, I got to just bring it up only because I have the Surface headphones that are here. If you guys are in the market for a headphone, I joke about it because she can't hear me now. But when I put this on, I even can't hear my wife talking to me. So it has something like 14 speakers inside of it. I used it most of my time stuck in the airport. It is probably the best set of headphones I ever had. There we go.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, no, I don't have any of these headphones myself. Tamika, I'd love to get your thoughts on the headphones because I hear they're awesome, especially noise cancellation. This is one of the selling points, which I think is pretty awesome. You don't hear anything, which is always fun, right?
So initially when we got these headphones, I was like, okay, this is bulky. I don't like bulky things, right? And we were going to send them back. But I opened up the package, I put them on or whatever. And I have to tell you, like if I have these on and like my son, because I have a home-based business, right? So oftentimes I'm interrupted by children. But if anyone comes and they're talking to me, I cannot hear nothing they're saying. And that's a beautiful thing for me sometimes when I'm listening to different things that I need to focus on with my ears. I'm auditory. Auditory on the learning curve for me is last. It's like my third thing. So to be able to have noise canceling headphones is a plus for me.
I love it. I love it.
Freaky in the house because you don't hear anything, guys. Anything at all. And I used it on the plane 2 weeks ago, and it was really kind of cool, and it's pretty amazing. And it comes with I just bring it up so you got it. Comes with a pretty cool kit. It has the USB thing, and what came in handy on the plane was using the little audio plug-in to plug into the plane system. So definitely pretty amazing. And then dumb things, again, for noise canceling, they have to be bulky, but little dumb things like having the volume as something that I could just turn here, not a button I have to hit. And it's smart enough that when I'm listening to something like music and I actually move it off my ear, it pauses, it auto pauses and goes out. So you could think about if they put that much stuff into the headphones, what they actually put into the actual devices themselves.
Absolutely. I think that's all really good points. And I'll tell you, these devices are meant for different people, right? I think that's probably one of the most important things. You'll notice the Pro 7 and the Pro X, right? These are going to be more high quality, flexible devices in the sense that you've got the typing keyboard that you can use, but it's also a tablet really, as opposed to, you got the Surface Go, which is going to be very lightweight. It's going to be very much not as high powered of a device, but it's going to be super mobile, right? Now, I am on the personal opinion with Michael as well that I like the actual keyboard personally myself. And these things are so light and portable that, you don't even need, in my personal opinion, the cover. I mean, I think you just get a normal laptop, right? Like this laptop Go or like the Surface laptop, which I'll just jump on this one, right? This is the one that I have. This works just fine on the go as well. I mean, it's really light. If I look, I don't know the exact weight here. Let's take a look here. So this is going to be a little under 3 pounds. I mean, super light still. I mean, you can easily hold it in one hand. It's not a problem at all. But what you'll notice is a lot more sturdy. Okay, these laptops, they're going to be actual laptops, right? So I'm going to be able to use it just like any other computer, right? It's going to have much more battery life, which is nice compared to one of those Surface Go's or one of the more portable devices. I'm going to have phenomenal performance, right? So I'm going to have some of those really high quality processors that I can use to really get my job done. And it's going to be beautiful displays. I will tell you one of the things that I really do like about my Surface product, which again is the generation before this one. So I don't even have this one. I need to upgrade pretty soon. But it's just beautiful. It works really well. I've got the touchscreen capability, so I don't always have to be using a mouse and a keyboard. I can actually just quickly touch and make edits on my screen. And the one thing that I will say, though, okay, when we're talking about differentiating this laptop versus, something like the Surface Go, for example, is that if you're somebody who is writing a lot, like you manually enjoy writing as opposed to typing. I personally like typing, but some people like writing. This is going to be much better suited, right? Especially if you have this in studio mode here. It's going to be really cool. I will tell you, we can actually go here to the Surface Pen, and I'm not sure if you have any experience with this, Michael, that you can talk to. Myself personally, I don't use it every day, but I've used the pen, and it's absolutely incredible. I mean, I remember when I was a kid and the iPads were first coming out, right? And the first version of the pen just came out, right? This feels like, I mean, levels beyond. I mean, when I'm writing with the pen, it literally feels like I'm writing. It's really weird at first, I'll tell you. It feels so rich. And so if you're somebody who's going to be writing a lot, right, you're annotating, especially like in a notes app or on some of these different documents, then that's why you would want a device that looks like this, because it's going to be a lot more difficult to do that on a laptop, device. You're more creative, you're more involved in that process, and this makes a little bit more sense, right? But if you want that laptop, the more static thing that you will be using your keyboard more, then that's a better fit, right? And so the whole point is, depending on how you're doing your job, you're going to have a device that hopefully fits that a little bit better. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on the pen, Michael, because I think that's another accessory.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're a writer or, we've seen a lot of the commercials that are out there. I see people using it all the time, and it's pretty in-depth of what you do. It's like old school having a pencil and paper.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
And
Has anybody ever used the pen?
You could see from the line that there's a device that fits everybody. For me, I usually say I don't like the kickstand in the back because usually, you all know I'm a sports guy. I'm working late at night, going out there. That kickstand hurts my legs to go out there. So I like having the hard top to go out there. Maybe like the book or the laptop works well.
Yeah, if we're looking like, okay, so now we talked about, something that's a little bit more portable, like the Go that I was just looking at, like, the Pro 7, the Pro X. Then we kind of went into, okay, more of a static, really solid device for, maybe somebody who's an information worker, right? You're on your device and you're using it for that. If you got somebody who is more, maybe engineering, maybe, they need something that's got a lot of capabilities when it comes to maybe more high-powered applications, something that's really, it's not top tier, but it's really, really solid laptop. This is where you're looking at the Surface Book 3. Okay, you're gonna have more processing power, more storage, more I believe battery life than what you see in just the normal laptop. It's a more high-powered device, but it's going to be very similar in the sense that it's got a similar touch and feel. It's just going to be that next level, right? And so for somebody who is using maybe some of those more powerful applications, they need some more capabilities with the actual device. Maybe they're using it for things that take a lot of memory, then this is something where the book would make a lot more sense. And if you've got somebody in the business, maybe C-level executive, and they just want to have, top tier, best thing that's available with Surface, it's going to be the Studio. Okay. Now, I will say the Studio is going to come at a premium. It's going to be a lot more expensive than what you'll be paying for the laptop and from these other tools. I think best bang for your buck personally is the laptop. That's my opinion. Okay. Not to say that is absolutely right, but if somebody wants top tier, best power, best feel, largest screen, this Studio 2 is just going to be absolutely incredible, right? You've got the desktop, you've got the Studio. Michael, if you want to say something, by all means.
Yeah, I was going to say this is Microsoft's answer to Apple. You're going to pay a top dollar price compared to an Apple top dollar price for somebody that wants to have that look on their desk, but now you have a PC to be able to utilize it. There's a mouse, there's a disc on the left-hand side. It's a top dollar item, but we've seen a lot of people wanting to put that or put it in a conference room.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you this is technically not highest level, okay? I don't think it's on here in terms of the Surface line, but oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name. If you remember, is it the Surface Hub? That's the name.
It's the Surface Hub. So the Surface Hub is where you have a smart board in that conference room that goes out there. It's touch, you go out and do it. I mean, look, I think there's something for everybody here. So I'll tell you that what I've owned, I have the Go today, I have the 4. In our fleet in the office, we have a Book 3. The Pro X is a cool thing because the pen, it's another portable one. It runs on an AMD processor, but the pen is actually auto charged directly into the cover. So I think there's something for everybody that's out there, depending on what you're going to spend. And listen, these are not inexpensive devices, but they are quality made. I will say that. So you get what you pay for. I don't think anyone will ever say that I bought a crappy Apple when you walk in and take any type of Apple's laptops on that end of it. The Surfaces are the same way. The quality's there. The display is phenomenal. The sound's phenomenal. And I'll say that in the real keyboards, they're pretty phenomenal too. So if you're looking for portability, you got the Pro 7s, and a few of these devices are also cellular enabled. So you can throw a chip in there and not have to worry about being on public Wi-Fi.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I think what you mentioned there, Michael, is a point that I'm going to just double down on, and that's that you're paying for what you get. Okay, this is not going to be the cheapest product line that will be out there on the market. Okay, and I'm just going to say that outright because I think it's important for people to realize. But the reason for that is you're paying for quality, right? You're paying for top tier tools, right? You're not paying for low level devices, and so just want to keep that in mind. Very, very high quality tools. There's something for everybody. The cheapest one, the Surface Go, I believe, is coming in somewhere under $600. So there is some cheap alternatives like this Go 2 that you could potentially.
I have that also in the office. It's small and it serves its purpose, but it's for someone that needs something above a Chromebook. And then the new laptop Goes could start off at $700 to go out there. For a good quality laptop, that's pretty good. And it goes higher up like everything else. I think these are for premium pieces. There are plenty of advantages that Microsoft's putting into that tie back to the Office 365 suite, to Teams, to everything else in place there. A lot of the advancements that you'll see in any laptop is going to be on the display quality and the sound quality. So we're all trying to be a little hybrid at this point in time, and there are a lot of good enhanced features in there.
Absolutely. So, I'm going to leave this here for everybody. Feel free to explore this as much as you like. I just kind of want to walk you through my perspective on these different devices. I think, again, if I was going to just kind of leave you with a couple of things before I leave it here for open it up for Q&A, I'll leave you with a couple things here. Number one, security is always going to be important. It's always going to be a critical topic that you need to be thinking about. And especially if you're using security built in with Microsoft 365, this is going to be the device that's going to be the easiest to integrate with everything that you're doing. On top of that, you're paying for quality. You're paying for, devices that have really, really nice capabilities that fit the needs of a variety of different workers that you might have inside of your business. So, I encourage you to explore, ask questions. If there's potentials for further demos in person, I'm not sure if that's available today because there's such a big back order. But if something like that comes, we'll let you know as soon as we can.
And Tamika, we were talking about throwing in a SIM chip, a data chip, so that there are plenty of AT&T, Verizon have separate data plans that you just put a SIM chip in and it becomes its own cellular internet for you. We have had a lot of customers that are in construction and real estate asking for those kind of add-ins so that they always have internet.
So where would that SIM chip go in my Surface?
And which Surface do you have?
Now that's a very good question. While you guys were talking, I was trying to figure it out.
So there's only a couple of.
That's my son, everybody. He's trying to help me find the SIM chip.
You know what? There's only a couple of these devices that have SIM capability, so I'll have to find out. For everyone else, I just bring it on that it's easy to have that chip in there. Mm-hmm. I personally never pay for another data plan. I actually go out there and I tether with with my cell phone. But in some cases, if the business unit, the business doesn't want to actually give them an extra device to plug in, they put a SIM chip in. And I think today it's the Pro X that has that came, and some of the Go models. They were relatively new because in reality, you want to keep the price down and you don't want to charge to have something that might not be possible. So we don't see that in all of the models. So as an example, I'm on an AT&T unlimited plan. I turn my phone into a mobile hotspot wherever I am in public. I don't want to use public Wi-Fi. That's just me. But on 5G, I'm jamming, so I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, well, I learned from you guys. I do the same thing. Every time I go to plug into a hotspot somewhere, I'd be like, oh, I hear Glenn in my head. No. So I just get my cord and plug it into my phone.
Hey, listen, it's better to be safe than sorry. So It's only some devices that have it. The best thing to do is to Google it and go out there. But not every unit comes with that option. And some people never use it. So in reality, like I said, I've never used it, but I just bring it up.
Okay.
Love it. So I wanted to open it up for Q&A. That was a great question, Tamika. Anybody else have any other questions, about Surface? Could be about security, could be about anything else. Got a couple minutes here. Wanted to go through that, and hopefully that helped, share some insights with you that maybe you didn't, you hadn't thought about just yet. So I'm going to open up the floor. And of course, Michael, if you want to add anything else in, by all means.
So I will say that you guys might have gotten some invitations because next Tuesday we're actually doing a Teams 2.0 with Andres on there. Andres, all of a sudden it filled up. We got probably about 15 on the first blast already. So if you haven't received it, ping me. You'll get it later today. That will be back to our more hands-on Teams type piece. This was something new for us to kind of give you guys an idea of what Surface is out there, because we do think it's kind of cool. And I could show you that besides Lenovo, that's probably the only other device that I own. And some of them have lasted for years. So I bring that up. So working with case managers, what would be the best Surface to go in the field? So it's a good question on there. So if price, so I'll say that the Surface go-tos are kind of small that were out there. You have to, they're cost effective. But the other side that we probably would want to look at is a device that maybe had cellular, unless you were going to go out there and give them internet, because that's the biggest problem with internet.
Yep. And so you can see here the Surface Pro X might be something you might want to look at. You know, because you're going to have LTE capabilities enabled, right? You're going to be able to very easily use this on the go. It's a beautiful device. So I think this is probably an option for you. And then additionally, if you wanted more of that laptop feel, I'd probably say the laptop is another good option because, you know, I personally myself, I take this laptop home every single night. So it's not necessarily built for being out in the field constantly, but I will tell you, you could use it if you wanted to. You're not going to have the LTE. It's a problem.
Right. And you might just want to tether then or have the phone. And all of these devices have rugged cases. So even on the go that we just showed, there's plenty of cases that are out there to make that more ruggedized. Keep in mind that different flavors of the Surface devices are on the field with every NFL game. I've been close there, and actually my local Microsoft rep works at Dolphin Stadium on the weekends to help with those devices. So again, there's cases that you'll have to put it in on that, but you know, you want to make sure you have to solve the internet problem before you decide what you want to do. And I guess, you know, the other thing that you can look at, Andre, is that I know we're talking about Surfaces, but this is actually a duo phone. This is actually a flip phone that runs, you know, Android operating system. You know, I haven't powered it in a while. I'll bring it up, but maybe this might be an answer for the small caseworker if you have an app. So it boots up, and it'll run flip screen. Might be a solution for you for case managers, because it does take a pen, you could write on it, and it'll be a dual screen to go out there. So food for thought if your app will support Android. So another solution. So here, it just booted up, and you can see that it's two screened. To give you a size, my hand compared to it. So it might be something that might be suitable because you'd put a cellular plan on it, and you'd have both internet and the ability to run an app on it. So it's called the Microsoft Duo, and it's full cellular capability. It's actually pretty cool. You know, I have this on T-Mobile right now, so it works pretty cool, and I bring it out there. For me, I need a keyboard. That's just me, but I can have the keyboard pop up on one of the screens. So might be a solution for you. So any other questions? Anything you guys have? If not, you know how to get in touch with us. Hopefully you enjoyed this. This was something different that we thought we'd bring out, as season starts. Remember the lower end pieces, if you're the lower end Surface devices are priced close to Chromebooks if you're doing virtual learning or looking to do something at home. And again, just a selfless plug. We sell Surface devices when we can get them. We are Surface authorized, but like most things that are out there, they are, severely limited on that. So it's first come, first serve, but we can always shop it for you. All right, guys. Well, listen, thank you for coming. I will go out there and I'm going to stop the recording. I'll make sure that everybody